Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you some articles out of History magazine. And all of these articles are stories from the Roman Empire. I'm not going in chronological order. I just figured I'd go in the order that's kind of the most interesting. I'm making an interesting sandwich. Although I think all three articles are all interesting, I feel like the ones that you guys will like most, I put first and third. So here's what I have for you today. First, we're starting off with Marcus Aurelius, very famous emperor. You'll find out why if you don't know. Next, we're going to head on to a story about how the Gauls sacked Rome, invaded the city, and it's a very interesting story, I think. And lastly, we are going to read this really great article that was very highly requested by the channel members about magic in Rome, spells and curses, a big part of daily life. But like I said, these were chosen by my channel members. They picked which articles about Rome we were going to read tonight. The members who chose these were Dreadlock Kickboxer, Luna, Krista, All the Happy Squirrels, and Marta. Thank you for overwhelmingly picking these articles. And if you, yes, you would like to pick a History magazine article in the future, you can click the join button right over there. Or if the join button is not visible because you're on mobile or for whatever reason, you can go to the description box and click the very first link that's in the description box there. It'll take you to the channel memberships. It is only 99 cents, which is the lowest it can possibly be. And you get all kinds of other perks as well, like your name in every video, lots of behind the scenes and exclusive content, and so much more. So let's get to reading these articles, starting with Marcus Aurelius. The 2nd century CE world of Emperor Marcus Aurelius was in shambles. A great plague ravaged Western Europe as he embarked on a long and bloody war against the Germanic tribes along the Danube frontier. Faced with these woes, along with old age and thoughts of death, the emperor sought comfort in philosophy. Throughout his life, notably at odd moments during the military campaign, he jotted down his personal struggles, philosophical beliefs, and insights about being a better ruler and a person. Out of this sincere expression of introspection came 12 books contemplating life and the human condition. In total, this collection is called Meditations. Philosopher Emperor. Born in 121 CE into an aristocratic family in Rome, Marcus Aurelius received an excellent education in rhetoric and philosophy. He studied Greek and quoted freely from Homer and Euripides. Perhaps that's why he wrote his meditations in Greek rather than Latin, the Roman Empire's official language. As a youth, he also became deeply interested in philosophy, particularly Stoicism, a school of thought that flourished in antiquity. One of its key tenets emphasized the development of inner strength and the acceptance of things beyond one's control. Founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium around 300 BCE, Stoicism grew to become one of the leading philosophies of the ancient world. And apologies for any mispronunciations. Feel free to correct me down in the comments if anything is very incorrectly pronounced. It flourished in ancient Rome, counting Cicero among its leading scholars and a good source of information on Stoicism in Rome. Epictetus, formerly enslaved Greek, became a highly influential Stoic philosopher studied by Marcus Aurelius. In fact, Meditations bear some resemblance to Epictetus's collection of mortal precepts called Enchiridion, or Manual. But Marcus Aurelius's work adds his own original voice to Stoicism's philosophical tradition. I skipped a line. to Stoicism's philosophical tradition, he gravitated to the school of thought and came to believe that perception is the basis of true knowledge. Happiness could be found through the practice of virtue and being guided at all times by reason in the face of life's vicissitudes. It's believed Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations as a form of introspection rather than for larger public consumption. The entries range from blunt maxims to cogent dissertations, and there is no definitive organization to the work, though some patterns have been identified, with themes organized around Stoic philosophy. Overall, it is generally agreed that Meditations gives a private window into what life was like for an imperial Roman individual to live as a Stoic. With gratitude. The work starts as a kind of reckoning in which Marcus Aurelius gives thanks to all those who positively influenced him throughout his life. For example, he credits his tutors for keeping him from superstition and vice and turning him toward a more austere and virtuous life. The more important of these tutors, he remembers, was Quintus Junius Rusticus, who corrected his impetuous character and introduced him to the Stoic philosophers. Marcus Aurelius also reminisces about his life at the court in Rome, where he arrived at age 17. His adoptive father, then Emperor Antoninus Pius, maintained a modest lifestyle, and so the young Marcus Aurelius was not thrust into a world of sumptuous clothes and luxurious living. He didn't even have a personal guard. The future emperor admired the dedication with which his adoptive father managed the empire and his calm but decisive personality. Marcus Aurelius ascended to the throne in 161 CE, co-ruling with his adoptive brother Lucius Verus until Lucius's death in 169. While Marcus Aurelius doesn't reflect directly about his life as an emperor, he touches on important related topics, including the weight of his responsibilities and the need to uphold justice. He recognizes that he must make decisions in the best interest of the people he governs. He writes, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. None of these things can injure me, for nobody can implicate me in what is degrading.'" I like that. He recognizes that power can be a burden and a temptation, emphasizing the importance of avoiding arrogance and maintaining humility in the face of authority. He also offers insights on how to cope with different situations, maintain inner tranquility, and remain focused on one's purpose in the face of obstacles. Among his more personal observations are the things that seem to vex him. He acknowledges that he hates what most human beings seem to love. Gladiatorial games, for example, repulse him. Sex is reduced to a brief seizure. And he does not understand why people are impressed by the purple robes worn by senators and emperors, when these are merely sheep wool dyed with shellfish blood. That's so true. He tries to remain calm at all times and not bother with what his neighbor will say or think about him. And he reminds himself, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." So true, right? Family plays a small part in his writings. Although he is exceedingly grateful for his wife, Faustina the Younger, daughter of Antonius Pius, he describes her as so obedient and so affectionate and so simple. Other contemporary sources were not as kind to Faustina. Historians such as Cassius Dio accused her of committing adultery with handsome soldiers and gladiators. In his writings, however, Marcus Aurelius has only good words for her. The two had 13 children together, but only 6 lived past childhood. When Faustina died in 175, the emperor grieved the loss. He entombed his wife in the mausoleum of Hadrian in Rome. War and death. Writing night after night from his military encampment along the Danube, Marcus Aurelius turns to darker subjects, including the nature of war. At various points he notates the gruesome reality of combat. Have you ever seen a severed hand or foot, or a decapitated head, just lying somewhere far away from the body it belonged to? But when day breaks, those ruminations fade and reality prevails. The philosopher by night must be a military leader by day. He acknowledges that it is not always easy. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being, even though it's preferable to huddle under the blankets. That's so true. Throughout Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reiterates almost obsessively the idea that everyone ultimately shares the same destiny in this short life, death. Human lives are brief and trivial, he writes. Yesterday a blob of semen, tomorrow embalming fluid, ash. There are reflections on great generals of the past, such as Alexander the Great, Caesar, and Pompey, and how, despite their rousing triumphs, they too departed this life. Although mentioned are the anonymous inhabitants of Pompeii and Herculaneum, who suffocated under the ash of Mount Vesuvius. Above all, the emperor's greatest quest is to find peace of mind as he muses how quickly life passes. Existence flows past us like a river. The what is in constant flux. The why has 1,000 variations. In the light of this transience, he states the best course is to do everything as if it were the last thing you were doing in your life. And yet death offers Marcus Aurelius a kind of liberation, a chance to detach from a world where many ignore the only value he recognizes, that of rational virtue and moral good. The true drama of the philosopher-emperor is that he tries to love his fellow human beings. The things ordained for you, teach yourself to be at one with those, and the people who share them with you, treat them with love, with real love. All this Marcus Aurelius tells himself without anguish or despair. Even death must be accepted in gratitude. Don't look down on death, but welcome it. Death is part of the natural scheme of things, he muses, comparing it with an olive that ripens and falls, praising its mother, thanking the tree it grew on. He says to accept death in cheerfulness and truth, grateful to the gods from the bottom of your heart. When Marcus Aurelius died on March 17th, 180, at age 58, a victim of the plague, he left behind an indelible mark. His writings have intrigued heads of state from Prussia's Frederick the Great to U.S. President Bill Clinton. When Wen Jiabao, China's premier from 2003 and 2013, claimed to have read Meditations more than 100 times, the work became one of the country's most published Greek classics. Interesting. We've got some other quotes here from Meditations. Here's one labeled, All we have is now. It's 3 quotes. All we have is now. You cannot lose another life than the one you're living now, or live another one than the one you're losing. Life is short. That's all there is to say. Get what you can from the present, thoughtfully, justly. Each of us lives only now, this brief instant. The rest has been lived already, or is impossible to see. The span we live is small, small as the corner of the earth in which we live it. Wow. Very deep, but so true. These 3 quotes are labeled under We Are One. Take into consideration that rational beings exist for one another, that doing what's right sometimes requires patience, that no one does the wrong thing deliberately, and the number of people who have feuded and envied and hated and fought and died and been buried. To accept it without arrogance, to let it go with indifference. And people exist for one another. You can instruct or endure them. These quotes are labeled, Be kind, be kind. Just pay attention and resolve to live up to your own expectations. Dig deep. The water, goodness, is down there. As long as you keep digging, it will keep bubbling up. Ooh, I like that. Remain straightforward, upright, reverent, serious, unadorned, an ally of justice, pious, kind, affectionate, and doing your duty with a will. The only rewards of our existence here are an unstained character and unselfish acts. Never regard something as doing you good if it makes you betray trust, or lose your sense of shame, or make you show hatred, suspicion, ill will, or hypocrisy. And these quotes are labeled How to Be. Never under compulsion, out of selfishness, without forethought, with misgivings, cheerfulness, without requiring other people's help, or serenity supplied by others. Not to be driven this way and that, but always to behave with justice and say things as they are. Entrust everything willingly to the gods, and then make your way through life, no one's master and no one's slave. No carelessness in your actions, no confusion in your words, no imprecision in your thoughts, no retreating into your own soul or trying to escape it, no overactivity. I should probably read his book, to be honest. It's all so profound and so simple and laid out, right? Like, it's just the most basic thoughts, but the way he says them, it's like, yeah, I totally agree. Here's a painting of him dying. Let's see, let's see what this says. Upon death, Marcus Aurelius was cremated and his remains laid to rest in Rome's mausoleum. Hadrian, that's up there. There's a coin here with him on it. Oh, how beautiful. This is Pompeii and Vesuvius. You can see the big volcano there. And to this day, they are still digging up Pompeii and discovering all kinds of amazing things. Hopefully there'll be an article on that someday with all the updates that we've learned about Pompeii. The Baths of Faustina. Well, what does it say where these are? Built in Miletus, which is in Turkey. Very nice. And there's Faustina right there. It's a bust. This is File Piety, a scene of Antonius Pius and his wife Faustina the Elder on a column. Oh, I see. That's them up there. There they are. There's a lot of other things happening, but there they are. This is ruins of Carnuntum and Upper Pannonia. It's one of the regions that he was writing all this in. This is a sculpture of him when he was 18. Very handsome. The Iron Gates, the Danube separating Serbia and Romania. Bunch of Romans here in a battle, showing the chaos of war, right? And there's a artist depiction of Epictetus right there. Then of course there's a big old, looks like bronze statue of him, and a copy of probably what would have been his writing tools. Probably not the exact ones, right? But like what he would have been using. Roman writing implements from the 1st century from the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Yeah, pretty neat. Let's move on to this very interesting story here. I'm going to put my magazine carefully over here. There we go. Okay, the Gauls sack Rome. This is a very interesting story about invasion of Rome, the 4th century BCE, that involves geese. Probably not in the way you're thinking. Let's find out what happens. The Roman Republic was booming in the beginning of the 4th century BCE. Wealthy and powerful, it had just defeated the Etruscan city of Veii, amassed an immense war chest, and doubled its territory. But then, out of the blue, the Republic suffered the unthinkable, occupation by a Celtic people, the Gauls. This was the first time that Rome and Gaul would face off, but it would not be the last. Over the coming centuries, the Romans and the Gauls would clash many times. But this first defeat in 387 BCE caused a collective trauma for Rome that lasted generations, shaping Roman attitudes toward all peoples from the north. Early encounters. By 600 BCE, the Gallic people in Subris had already settled south of the Alps, where they founded Mediolanum, which is Milan today. Over the next 2 centuries, other Gallic peoples would do the same and expand into southern and western Europe. Europe. Around 400 BCE, the Senones settled on the shores of the Adriatic, in the region that the Romans would later call Ager Gallicus. But this settlement was still a safe distance from Rome, and on the other side of the Apennines that formed the mountainous backbone of the Italian peninsula. A decade later, the Senones crossed the mountains and attacked the Etruscan city of Clusium, about 90 miles north of Rome. Writing more than 4 centuries later, the Roman historian Livy described this Gallic expansion and how the people of Clusium appealed to Rome for help, and they were denied. Roman historians described the Gauls in big, sweeping strokes, which were likely exaggerated. The Gauls were tall, pale, long-haired, blonde, and mustached. Some of them, according to 1st century BCE Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, lighted their hair with lime water. There are various theories as to why they made this incursion into the Italian peninsula. In general, Roman sources suggest that the Gauls were less developed as a society than the inhabitants of Italy and coveted their farmland, in particular their wine. In the 1st century CE, centuries after early Gallic expansion, the Greek scholar Plutarch wrote that when the Gauls tasted wine for the first time, they became beside themselves with the novel pleasure which it gave, and they set off in quest of the land which produced such fruit, considering the rest of the world barren and wild. Although the Gauls' fondness for wine did tend to be exaggerated, there was a kernel of truth to it. Later, Italian and Roman wine merchants would enter Gaul as the peaceful forerunners to the legions that would follow. Seasoned warriors. The Gauls were visually striking because of their clothing, which was dyed with bright colors. Unlike the Romans, the men wore pants, or brachae in Latin, a garment typical of the nomadic horsemen of the Eurasian steppes. The Greeks and Romans considered it barbaric, even effeminate, for men to wear such attire. The elites among the Gauls wore jewelry, most notably torques, which were thick metal necklaces of gold or silver, open at the front and twisted like braids. In 361 BCE, some years after the assault on Rome, a young Roman called Titus Manlius came face to face with a gigantic Gallic warrior in single combat. Despite the Gauls' immense size, in Roman tales the height of the Celts is always emphasized. Titus defeated him, seized his torque, and was known thereafter as Torquatus, a moniker that would pass to his descendants. As for protection in conflict, many Gallic warriors had nothing more than an elongated oval shield and a helmet adorned with feathers. Their typical weapon was a long sword, best suited for slashing. Many stereotypes grew up about the ferocity with which the Gauls fought. Allegedly, it was more daunting than that of other adversaries the Romans had faced until then. Writing in the 1st centuries BCE and CE, Greek historian Strabo explained, "The whole race, which is now called both Gallic and Galatic, is war-mad, and both high-spirited and quick for battle, although otherwise simple and not ill-mannered. And therefore, if roused, they come together all at once for the struggle. As for their might, it arises partly from their large physique and partly from their numbers." According to classical sources, the Gauls attacked en masse to the sound of their war horns, without the use of tactical formations or reserve troops. Strabo felt it would make it easier over time for the Romans to conquer Gaul than Hispania, home of the Iberians. Whereas the Gauls tended to fall upon their opponents all at once and in great numbers, meaning they would be defeated all at once. The Iberians would husband their resources and divide their struggles, carrying on war in the manner of brigands, different men at different times and in separate divisions. Battle of the Allia. The Etruscans of Clusium called on Rome to help them. The Senate sent 3 ambassadors who entreated Brennus, leader of the Gallic Senones, to withdraw. When Brennus refused, the ambassadors, instead of returning to Rome, joined the ranks of Clusium in trying to repel the Gauls. By throwing their support so obviously behind the Clusians, they contravened the law of nations, the equivalent of current international law. The decision gave Brennus a pretext to declare war on Rome. After defeating the Clusians, Brennus led his troops south toward Rome. Livy described their terrifying procession. The whole country's front and around was now swarming with the enemy, who, being as a nation given to wild outbreaks, had by their hideous howls and discordant clamor filled everything with dreadful noise. A Roman army marched north and intercepted the Gauls less than 10 miles outside the city on the banks of the Allia River, a tributary of the Tiber. It was the first time that the legions had fought against the Gauls, and the result was disastrous. The Romans were outnumbered, a situation that happened often in their clashes with the Gauls. As a result, the tribunes of consular rank who commanded the Roman army redeployed soldiers to the flanks. The center, with the ranks depleted, were soon breached, and the Gauls surged unstoppably forward. The legionaries from the left flank fled to the neighboring city of Veii, 10 miles northwest of Rome, while those on the right retreated to the capital itself. 3 days later, Brennus and his army of Gauls stood at the gates of Rome. The city was exposed, for it lacked a complete perimeter wall. The bulk of the population fled, even the Vestal virgins, guardians of the city's sacred fire. With no one to oppose them, the Gauls stormed into Rome and pillaged the city. High-ranking elderly senators, who had refused to be evacuated, sat in their curule chairs in the middle of the forum, or according to some sources, in the atria of their houses. Roman sources claim that when the first Gauls arrived, they were stunned by the dignity and composure of these elder statesmen. One invader allegedly tugged at the long white beard of Senator Marcus Papirius to see if the figure might be a statue. Papirius responded with a blow from his cane. The Gaul then killed Papirius with his sword, and his companions massacred the rest. Brennus's men looted and destroyed the city as the terrified populace looked on. Livy wrote, "In whatever direction their attention was drawn by the shouts of the enemy, the shrieks of the women and boys, the roar of the flames, and the crash of houses falling in, thither they turned their eyes and minds as though set by fortune to be spectators of their country's fall, powerless to protect anything left of all they possessed beyond their lives." Some Romans had managed to take refuge on the Capitoline Hill and were safely hidden. But the Gauls spotted footprints going up the hill that belonged to a messenger, who the Romans had sent to Ardea to seek help. The Gauls followed the same route and sent an advance party up the hillside that very night. Neither the Roman guards nor their watchdogs heard them coming, but geese, sacred to the goddess Juno that lived there, did. The alarmed honking alerted the Roman defenders, who took up arms and forced their attackers back. Woe to the vanquished. 7 months passed, and the Gauls held their siege, but it took its toll on them. According to Livy, they had their camp on low-lying ground between the hills, which had been scorched by the fires and was full of malaria. Accustomed as a nation to wet and cold, they could not stand this at all, and tortured as they were by heat and suffocation, disease became rife among them, and they died off like sheep. At last a negotiated settlement was reached. The Gauls agreed to leave Rome in exchange for 1,000 pounds of gold. The defenders came down from Capitoline Hill bearing treasures and weighed them in the forum before their conquerors. When the tribune Quintus Sulpicius noticed the Gauls were putting fake weights onto their scales in order to claim more riches, he complained. Brennus dropped his own sword onto the scales and exclaimed, "Vae victis, woe to the vanquished." Resigned, the Romans handed over even more gold to offset the weight of the sword. Roman historians differ on how the Gallic siege ended. Both Plutarch and Livy say that Marcus Furius Camillus, what a name, Marcus Furius Camillus, an exiled general, responds to Rome's call for help. He is appointed dictator and uses his might to expel the Gallic forces. Writing in the 2nd century BCE, the historian Polybius makes no mention of Camillus or an expulsion of the Gauls. Rather, in his telling, Rome pays a ransom and the Gauls simply leave. Facts and fictions. Classical sources undoubtedly contain factual details, but legendary elements and exaggerations are woven among them. There is some evidence to show that Rome did suffer a defeat in sacking around 387 BCE. Greek authors such as Aristotle and Heraclides of Pontus, who were writing not long after the events, mention an invasion. Archaeologists, however, have not found evidence of mass destruction and fires as terrible as in Livy's writings. Rome appears to have recovered very quickly in the years that followed, which would have been unlikely if the damage was severe as described. Evidence suggests that rather than a Gallic army set on occupation, the invaders were a band of warriors who attacked Rome in a quick raid. They probably looted what they could, but did not demolish buildings or set fire to the city. That sounds likely, doesn't it? The story of the Gallic invasion, as retold in the histories written centuries later, is evidence of Metus Gallicus, an exaggerated fear of Gauls and other northern people. This prejudice was galvanized at the end of the 2nd century BCE as groups of Germanic, Cimbri, and Teutoni people pushed south into Roman territory. Metus Gallicus would become a driving force in Rome's expansionary policy. The perceived threat would serve as a pretext for Julius Caesar's 1st century BCE campaigns in Gaul, but it also explains why his victories over the Gauls were celebrated with an unprecedented 15 or even 20 days of Thanksgiving back in Rome. Let me see real quick. Okay, that's the last page. So yeah, here's a cool painting of the geese sounding the alarm. This is called The Sacred Geese of the Capitol by Henri Paul Motte, which is a really beautiful painting and very strange if you don't know the story, huh? This is a piece of the frieze of the temple where you can see the sacred geese. What's happening down here? Watching the parade. Oh, it's a bunch of geese being paraded in a parade, in a festival of some sort. Happening here, tipping it's the sword being added to the scales, and he's like, that's too darn bad, pay me more. Sculpted heads, wow, by the Celts. Wow, interesting. And this is a coin from the Gauls. Wow. What's it says? It's with a war horn in one hand and a severed head in the other. Here's that story you read about the senator staying in his seat. The warrior Gaul tugs at his spear to see if he's real, and he hits him with his cane. Nice painting there. But again, if you don't know the context, it's like, what's happening? And it's a strange painting. Here's a map. Here you can see the area that Rome is in control of. Here is in red. You can see the Battle of the Allia there. And there's Rome. There's a depiction there of the Gauls climbing the walls of Rome. We've got a battle here. Let's see. Just a random combat. It's not meant to be anybody. It's just a Roman guy fighting a Gallic guy. And here's a basic, lookbook of what the Gauls looked like, which these outfits look really cozy. It looks like pajama pants. And this is the upper part of their long swords, their spears. It's really neat. Beautiful, beautiful countryside here. Where is this exactly? This is vineyards of Ancona. That wine that they were obsessed with, apparently. There's a cool Gallic shield there. And then back to the title page. The Gallic warriors here, riding off to Rome. I just noticed down here, there's a Celtic helmet, too. Do you see that? pretty neat too. It's very practical. But let's move on to probably one of the most requested History Magazine articles that my channel members have ever asked for. All of you guys wanted to hear about magic spells in Rome. So let's read about it. You know, I almost didn't include this in the list of topics to give to my channel members, just because I feel like no one would be interested in this, but holy moly, I was so wrong. Here we go. Roman culture often operated on the premise that bigger is better, and religion was no exception. Grand marble temples dedicated to the Olympians and gorgeous statues of the gods all begged to be worshipped. But these large public types of formal religion were not enough for everyday Romans and their everyday problems. Things like disease, infertility, mean neighbors, petty theft, and even sports betting required a smaller, more personal touch. In situations like these, Romans might turn to magic. Magic rituals and rites are often practiced in private, making archaeological evidence difficult to procure centuries later. No individuals have been conclusively identified as sorcerers or witches. However, thanks to the conservation of sites like Pompeii, I'm telling you, the tools of their trade have been preserved among the private homes frozen under volcanic ash. In 2019, a box of amulets, now known as the Sorcerer's Trove, was found at Pompeii. It contained dozens of tiny figurines, including a skull, a satyr, gods, and amulets associated with good luck. Whether spells against the evil eye, collections of protective amulets, or troves of curse tablets, magical objects reveal the large role these underground practices played in Rome. Magic and the state. Throughout Rome's history, there was tension between formal religion, or religio, and informal practices, or superstitio. Both had the same aim, to commune with other worldly forces. Praying to and honoring the Olympian gods were viewed as acts contributing to the public good, supporting the deities who would in turn protect Rome. Magic, however, was viewed with suspicion because its aims were personal. Practitioners sought to use the supernatural to change the natural course of events solely to improve their lot in life, a motivation seen as selfish and manipulative. Measures to curb and control magical practices were imposed throughout Roman history. The laws of the 12 Tables, the first Roman legal system, were drawn up in the 5th century BCE. They include stipulations against sorcery, specifically against a person who had sung an evil spell, and he who has enchanted crops in order to steal them. In the early 1st century BCE, Sulla's Cornelian law against murderers and poisoners imposed death sentences on forms of magic, including sorcery and human sacrifice. Sulla's law was the basis for periodic suppression of magical practices in the imperial period. Reflecting the complex attraction and repulsion effect of magic on Roman society, emperors frequently dabbled in magic, yet at the same time persecuted magical practitioners, especially if their art was seen as a threat to the ruler. Midway between private magic and official religion were the many mystery cults that became popular throughout the Roman world, such as the mysteries of Isis and this name, I think it's Dionysus? I did an article about him one time, and everyone was like, you pronounced his name super wrong, and then I forgot the right one. I think it's Dionysus. Like, I don't even know anymore. I'm pretty sure it's Dionysus. The drunken wine god guy. For much of the imperial period, the Roman authorities tolerated the cults despite their secrecy and use of magical rites. Occasionally, figures associated with such mysteries could fall foul of anti-magic laws. The late 2nd century writer Aurelius was an initiate of the Dionysian mysteries and author of The Golden Ass, a tale of a man who dabbles in magic. Citing Aurelius's association with magic, The author's in-laws accused him of seducing his wife, a wealthy widow, using black magic. Although Apuleius mounted a brilliant legal defense, his legal scrape reflected the ingrained idea held across Roman society. Magic was a real force that could destroy people's lives and livelihoods. Evil eye and amulets. One of the most feared practices was the invidia, or evil eye. It is widely believed that people could harm others with just a look. In natural history, Pliny the Elder includes fantastical accounts of individuals who used the evil eye not only to sicken people, but also kill them. Invidia could also be invoked through certain hand gestures. Pliny wrote, "To sit by a pregnant woman or by a person with whom any remedy is being administered, with the fingers of one hand inserted between those of the other, acts as a magic spell." I guess to do this. Interesting. That's a spell. If the fingers are thus joined, clasping one or both knees, or if the ham of one leg is first put upon the knee of the other, and then changed about, the omen is of still worse signification. Protection against the evil eye often took the form of symbols. Domestic mosaics and reliefs have been uncovered depicting the eye being attacked by gods or creatures. Romans also used amulets for protection against invidia. Phallic amulets in particular are believed to have protective power. People would wear them around the neck as pendants. Phallic images also appeared painted on facades and incorporated in mosaic flooring of the home. Tintinnabula, ceramic or bronze bells found in many homes, often had a phallic-shaped clapper. What's it? Tintinnabula. I've never heard that. Children were seen as particularly vulnerable to spells and commonly wore amulets to protect themselves. When a baby boy was 9 days old, a golden ball known as a bulla was placed around his neck. The bulla supposedly repelled the evil eye. At 16, the age of majority, the young man would take off his bulla and offer it to the Lares, or household gods, or to Hercules on the domestic altar. According to Ovid, in addition to protecting against curses, the bulla guarded against premature death and the appearance of larvae, troublesome specters of the dead. Girls wore a similar amulet known as a lunula that was shaped like a crescent moon. Curses and spells. Roman lawmakers greatly feared more malicious forms of magic. Curses and spells could be used to inflict harm on any adversary, typo there, whether relating to a legal affair, a sporting event, or matters of the heart. The best proof that sorcery was an everyday practice in the Roman world is preserved in curse tablets, known as tabulae defictionum. Found in all the provinces of the Roman Empire, these tablets are small rectangular sheets of metal, often lead, with text inscribed in Greek or Latin. The spells written on them are intended to cause their targets harm. Having been engraved, the tablets were then tied, or more commonly pierced with a nail to complete the spells. Then, curse tablets needed to be hidden away for the spells to stay intact and work their magic. People buried them, threw them down wells, or placed them in secure locations where they wouldn't be found. Bodies of water were popular. Archaeologists have discovered tablets in wells, riverbeds, and the sea. Curse tablets are also common in graves, especially of people who died prematurely or violently. Dozens have also been found in amphitheaters, where many gladiators met their deaths. Sometimes before nailing and burying a curse tablet, certain rites are performed, such as making an offering or sacrificing an animal. For example, a tablet discovered at the Roman site of Olbia near Marseille, France, reads, "Just as this kitten has not harmed anyone, in the same way they cannot win the trial. In the same way that the mother of this kitten has not been able to defend them, so their lawyers cannot defend them." The many curse tablets discovered so far share common themes. The one cited above, for example, belongs to a long list of tablets connected with legal proceedings. Using a little magic was thought to increase the chances of securing a favorable judgment. It is striking, however, that the tablets never refer to the judge, but rather seek to harm the accusers, witnesses, and lawyers. The spells were likely performed during the trials before sentencing. A tablet discovered in Bath, England, contains a curse against someone who has given false testimony. It appears to have been made collectively by several members of one's family: Eurycalus, Docilosa his wife, Docilus his son, and Docilina, Decentinus his brother, Alogiosa, and reads, "Whosoever has perjured himself, there you are to make him pay for it to the goddess Solus in his own blood." There were curse tablets seeking revenge against thieves and a plethora of jealous curses against romantic rivals. One found in the ancient city of Hadrumetum, which is modern-day Sousse in Tunisia, and dating to the 3rd century, contains a spell asking Sextilius, son of Dionysia, will sleep no more, that he burn up and be made mad, and that he neither sleep nor be able to sit nor speak, but that he has me in his mind, Septima, daughter of Amoena, that he is consumed mad with love and desire for me. Interesting. Sporting competitions such as chariot races were also common subjects. Another cursed tablet found at Hadrumetum reads, "I adjure you, demon, whoever you are, and I demand of you from this hour, from this day, from this moment, that you torture and kill the horses of the greens and whites, and that you kill and crash their drivers, Clarus, Felix, Primulus, and Romanus, and leave not a breath in their bodies." That's mean. Be a good sports person. The text ends with a magical incantation, Yao, Yastao, Oryo, Eya, because that'll help, right? Wicked witches. Some of the rites associated with the cursed tablets are carried out by individuals, as the creation of these troves of cursed tablets attest. Perhaps because of the unlawful nature of magic at various times in Rome, practitioners were careful to hide their vocations. That may be why no documents have yet been found in which someone openly proclaims their status as a magician. There are Roman literary sources that feature witches and wizards. These are characters drawn from contemporary life rather than from the mythical witches like Circe and Medea. The 1st century BCE lyric poet Horace wrote a satire about sorcerers residing on the Esquiline Hill on the outskirts of Rome. In it he describes 2 witches, Canidia and Sagana, who tear a black ewe lamb to pieces with their teeth and collect its blood in a hole in the earth. It sounds like Roald Dahl's The Witches. They then invoke the Manes, specters of the dead, and Hecate, goddess of witchcraft and poisons. At night they gather bones and noxious herbs from the graveyards of the Esquiline. Horace describes in gruesome detail how Canidia tortures a teenage boy by burying him up to his neck and placing food just out of reach while he slowly starves to death. Canidia then extracts the boy's liver and marrow to make a love potion. In the 1st century CE epic poem Pharsalia, the Roman poet Lucan tells the story of Rome's civil war between Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. In one episode, Pompey's son seeks out the Thessalian witch Erichtho to reveal the outcome of an upcoming battle, and Lucan's description spares no detail of her hideousness. The witch's face haggard, vile with neglect, her dreadful countenance of a hellish pallor, veined within uncombed locks, is unknown to the pure heavens above. Her tread blights the seed in the rich fields. Her breath poisons the untainted air. Erichtho desecrates a corpse to reveal the future, and Lucan relishes every disturbing detail. Then she began by filling fresh wounds in the breast of that corpse with warm blood, washing the innards clean of gore, pouring into them moon-born poison. She added commonly known baneful weeds and leaves steeped with unspeakable spells, and herbs her own deadly mouth had spat upon at birth, with all the venom she herself had given to the world. These accounts are fiction. fictional, but their authors were drawing upon common beliefs about witches who violated human bodies, both living and dead. A funerary inscription found in Rome belonging to a child who died at a young age seems to corroborate that Romans believed witches existed. As I grew towards my 4th year, I was seized and killed when I had the potential to be sweet for my mother and father. I was snatched by a witch's hand, ever cruel so long as it remains on the earth and does harm with its craft. Breaking the spell. Although anti-magic laws were periodically used to crack down on flagrant cases, in general, magical activity that did not openly bring about a social scandal was quietly tolerated for much of the imperial period. The polytheistic state religion of Rome left room for such personal activity, as well as the mystery cults. Even as Constantine the Great championed Christianity in the early 4th century, he still distinguished between harmful and unharmful magic, permitting the latter. Matters changed rapidly in the following decades, however. During the reign of Constantine's heir Constantius, laws in 357 and 358 clamped down on all types of magic, including sorcerers, soothsayers, and interpreters of dreams. The new official Christian faith could not share the same civic and religious space as magic. From then on, magic was rooted out and destroyed as part of the persecution of paganism and witchcraft that marked Christendom until the modern era. So over here we can see some examples of curses. Here we have some nails that are probably driven into the curse tablets. You can see one here that's holes in it. What's this? Oh, this is also a curse tablet. Oh, they're all curse tablets. I see. Let's see what they say. This was found in Rome. I call on the gods to destroy them. I invoke you against my enemies. Demisia Omonia of Menecrates, Nicaea, that of Cyrus, Nice Porista, Asclepiades, Time, Say, goodness. They were against everybody. Holy moly, they got a list. They're like Arya Stark. Reciting their list there. This tablet was found in Italy. It says a goddess was invoked against a certain Porcello, a doctor by profession, destroy his entire body. Goodness, his head, teeth, eyes, may all Porcello's body, limbs, entrails disintegrate, languish, and collapse. Destroy, crush, kill, strangle Porcello and his wife, Marilla. Their soul, heart, buttocks, liver, just annihilate that, please. This tablet was found in London. It says, I curse Teresia Maria and her life and mind and memory and liver and lungs mixed up together, and her words, thoughts, and memory, that she may be unable to speak what things are concealed. Man, it's like, how bad could these people have been? This one was found in Rome. It includes a curse against Rodine, perhaps by a woman jealous of her. Just as the dead man who is buried here can neither speak nor talk, so may Rodine die as far as Marcus Licinius Faustus is concerned. This pater, I entrust Rodine to you, that she be always hateful to Marcus Licinius Faustus. Make her hate her boyfriend. Goodness, we've got some witches here practicing magic. I guess that's supposed to be Kanita and Sagana. Let's see how wretched they are. Let's see. Ooh, she's really pretty. She's fine. They're not as bad as the description. My goodness. So this is kind of creepy, but a little, almost like a voodoo doll, huh? And people were so angry. Let's see. This is in Pompeii, showing a traveler consulting a magician. There's another curse tablet here with holes in it. Let's see. This is found in Egypt and written in Greek, Coptic, and Demotic. It is a list of spells. Wow. Take fat or an eye of a night owl and a ball of dung rolled by a beetle and oil of an unripe olive, and grind them all together until smooth, and smear your whole body with it, and say to Helios, I adjure you by your great name, and moisten it, and say in addition, Make me invisible, Lord Helios, in the presence of any man until sunset. Interesting. We have a whole bunch of different protections from curses. This is a medallion with Horus on it, the Egyptian god. We've got some hands here, lots of hands. Showing the sign of the fig and a phallic hand gesture, a hand talisman used to invoke a deity, probably attached to poles. Here you can see a bola on this little boy on the statue. A little lucky charm. Let's see, a portrait here, and she's wearing the lunula. You can see crescent moon there. And a little lucky amulet that has Medusa on it. Let's see, this is Pompeii. I guess you could kind of see some remnants of murals there. Lots of pigeons. And here's another bola. A mural here showing an evil eye being stabbed and bitten by snakes and birds and scorpions and worms and dogs. It looks like it's being farted onto. See, this looks like a little magic altar that you'd have in a home. Yeah, the Liris Familiaris. We've got a neat painting here. It's from Herculaneum. And it shows a mystery cult, and who knows what they're doing here. It says they're a cult to Isis. They got a little altar there. They all got special robes to wear. Let's see. This says a mosaic to repeal the evil eye, it says. It's from Antioch in Turkey. And this one is of Constantine. You can see him on his throne there with his little cross. That's how you know it's Constantine. And this is fun. This is in Pompeii, showing these women consulting this witch. And look at her face. She's going, That's definitely a witch. You can just tell by her expressions. And they're like, oh, snap. And then this is another amulet here. Another hand amulet. So that's all that I have for you for tonight. So thank you so much for watching. I should be getting a new history magazine article soon. When you see this, I'll have already moved to Washington, so I have to change my address, so make sure I get my new issue. But when I do, I'm going to post to my channel members which articles you guys can choose from, and we'll set up some more videos. And if you'd like to join, you can just click the join button or the first link in the description box. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good night.